Hi, everybody. Happy, hopefully not stressful tax day. Hopefully, you got it done already and you can be here. If not, I forgive you. I understand. And hopefully, our tax dollars get used for wonderful things, schools, hospitals, drug rehab, creative things, things that make our lives better, which is what the Creativity Show is all about, encouraging our creativity. The only thing that's better for me than creating is sharing creativity with you, hoping to inspire, inform, help you to give yourself permission to be creative, which is why I've been doing stencils for a while now of all the different art forms I've done. We are going to continue the stenciling because it's a great way to start to build our creative confidence. Today, I'm going to show how to use a stencil as a template. I've shown a lot of creating in front of the camera using stencils with paints, acrylic paints, and cone brushes. Today, I'm going to trace a stencil with just a regular number 2 pencil, and then I'm going to use that template tracing to color it in with um, colored pencils, but you can do it with crayons. You can make them any number you want and make creative projects for anyone from children to your community, family, friends. So we're going to start with showing you this stencil. I like to wear a different stencil. You have a close-up of the picture um, that
You
we.
want me to do that?
Yeah. So there's a close-up of this iris stencil, which I'm going to be using today in this, showing you how to use a stencil as a template. So there's the close-up of this iris stencil, white acrylic paint on uh, a royal blue silk top. I also am sharing some jewelry I made, a close up so you can see that. I love to try to make anything and everything pretty much. So there's so many different things in our lives, from wardrobe and jewelry and home decor and florals and paintings and frame designs and writing. So today, as we've been doing for a number of these live stream virtual visits, while I'm working on the iris in front of the camera live, these pre-recorded stories from my memoir will be playing. And today I just thought of sharing the art that we have made into limited edition museum quality prints right here at the Emerald Lady. The art is in between every one of my short stories because creative reverie, the sanctuary of creativity, the stepping into creative flow, happiness, increasing creativity is what I'm most inspired to share with you. It's a way we can heal ourselves, enhance our lives, and help others. So let us look at, I'm going to let Bodhi come in and show you. Here are a bunch of the stencil cards I've made from the floral stencils. I've lost count of how many are up on Patreon, free for the Patreon members, or $3 a piece for anyone. So these are the larger uh, size, and below that row is the smaller size. Your SVGs, you can print out any size you like. And then on the floor here are the larger and smaller stencils that I've used, so they have paint on them. And then there's a whole bunch of more wildflowers that I did and divided from the art I did for the Warbler and Wildflower 26 art pieces. And we're going to show you one other thing before we get going with the story and art creation, which is over here is the Warblers and Wildflowers stencils on the bottom, and on the top they're just the Warblers divided. You already saw the Wildflowers in the pink, and this is how I lay out the work in the design part of a new project. So here is a scarf I made with the warblers, the 26 warblers. And the next thing I'm going to do is warblers, perhaps warblers and wildflowers on this, what is a graduation robe that's going to turn into an art piece. So as I say often, I find people donate, or I go treasure hunting in used stores. So everything is fun, fast, and frugal. Everything that I put stencils on was either a donation, a hand-me-down, or a find, a frugal find. So we can create in a fun, fast, and frugal way, and we can make art to wear, decorate our homes, whatever we choose to do with our creativity, make gifts for others, prints. I showed those last live stream, some fine art I did with the stencils. Here's cards. So I'm going to continue with the cards, and we're going to start with, we're going to continue with the pre-recorded audiobook. And today's first story is called Ugly Art in the Beautiful World. When I went to New York with my portfolio at 30 years old, this story is about that experience. So, ready when you are. All right. Well, then let me glove up. I do this so I don't get the lotion on my hands on the art. And I guess we're ready. Oh, we have a comment or a question? Joni B said, good afternoon. Nice that you're here, Joni. I love to feel you and that you're here. I hope you're having a beautiful day.
Yep, my mic wasn't on. Joni said, good afternoon for those of other people on the stream.
All right. So, yes, good afternoon to you, Joni. Thanks for being here. It always makes me happy. As I said earlier, the even better than creating is sharing, connecting with you all with through creativity. All right. We are ready for the story. Ugly Art in the Beautiful World. The artists I admired do art for love, even those fortunate enough to sell it for money. One does not necessarily lead to the other. People said my work moved them and some bought it. I want to create for the rest of my life. It is what nourishes my spirit, so I decided to see if it could be a viable business. An owner of a big gallery in San Francisco and one in Manhattan agreed to review my work. Though our meeting was at 9 in the morning, he answered the door in his bathrobe. Before I entered, I waved to my male friend in his car waiting for me to enter before he drove away. I made certain the gallery owner saw him and understood he was also seen. As I entered, I asked to use his phone and gave his address to the person who would be picking me up and told my friend I would call when the meeting was over, knowing the gallery owner heard me. I knew it was going to be strange, but I did not feel in danger. I thought, he will not be a gallery for me, but I'm going to learn something about how the art dealing world works. He offered me coffee with hard liquor that he was drinking, which I declined. At first, he barely looked at my portfolio as he talked only about himself for hours. Every time he got a phone call, he told them to put off his next meeting, saying he was looking at some work. Then he started calling it some good work, which changed to great work. By midday, he said to cancel his appointments for the rest of the day because he was looking at incredible work, and he got increasingly flirtatious. He told me I was so formal and distant, to which I replied, "This is a business meeting." Then he said he felt like the frog and I was the princess, and if I kissed him, he would turn into a prince. I told him I did not believe in fairy tales even when I was a child. Out of nowhere, he said, "You do not have to have sex with me to get into my gallery. You just have to act like you would at openings." I responded, "No, I do not have to do that to get into a gallery because my work is good. Even if it wasn't good, I still would not do that," and I left. I decided to go to New York and seek out a more professional response to my work. The absurd meeting made me think about how artists can easily be taken advantage of because many are sensitive, timid, or undersupported, making them more vulnerable. Predatory people can be attracted to artists for these reasons. I was left with $50 after buying my round-trip flight to Manhattan. I stayed for 5 weeks by walking everywhere I went and sleeping on a photographer friend's couch. I left every morning at dawn when she converted her living room into her studio. I would walk from gallery to gallery, then to the Metropolitan Museum of Art that was on a donation basis. I would end up talking with an older woman admiring the art every day without thinking about it. I've always enjoyed the wisdom and perspective of older people. Most days, they would invite me to lunch and never let me pay when I offered. I did just fine on one meal a day, and after walking to a few more galleries, I would return to the museum to rest someplace safe, like the Japanese garden, until it was time to go back to my friends in the evening to sleep. I did not need to spend my limited resources with this routine. One day, while I was weeping silently in front of a Van Gogh painting, a man came over and sat at the other end of the bench. He was also crying without any sound. We talked a little, and I discovered he was an Egyptologist and restored paintings for the museum. He told me later over tea that no female museum visitor had ever spoken with him in the many years he had worked at the museum. It saddened me to realize people were so full of fear that they could not even talk to each other. He was married, and I was in a relationship in California. We parted knowing we would never see each other again, but we both felt better about people, and that was wonderful and complete. I walked all over New York City, leaving my portfolio with gallery assistants in the hopes it would make its way to an agent or gallery director. Attempting to meet with them directly seemed wrong. I wanted my art to stand on its own rather than being tied to an impression I gave off. Most gallery owners and dealers were men, and I was a young woman. In my 5 weeks in Manhattan, I went to over 100 galleries and discovered only 4 were showing nature. 2 were paintings done by old masters, 1 had massive art, and the last gallery was showing natural scenes in a twisted way. Not one gallery was showing the kind of work I did, which can be described as dreamlike realism, or as my educated mother described it, elegant primitivism. To get an understanding of how my work would be received, I decided to show my work to gallery owners I knew would not be interested in my type of work, so they would have no reason not to be candid. One gallery owner said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but your work is beautiful." "Why would you apologize for saying my work is beautiful?" "Because as you can see, I deal in ugly art." I replied, "Yes, you and most of the other galleries in town. I approached you for feedback because your gallery has well done ugly art." "Thank you. I can't advise you how, but I know you will do well somehow." One afternoon, while I was sitting in a beautiful hotel lobby writing in my journal, a man asked if he could sit by me. We talked, and he said he knew an art agent and offered to introduce me. I asked him to drop my portfolio with the agent. When I went to pick up my work in the Helmsley building, I learned she had represented Andrew Wyeth. She said she had not seen a portfolio as deep as mine in a long time, and she would represent me if I moved to New York. I did not think I could stay healthy in the dense city without enough nature to refill my well of inspiration. Central Park was lovely, but not enough, and could be dangerous. Instead of being discouraged by the lack of possible outlets for my work, I left Manhattan with increased motivation to continue what I was moved to do. The lack of representation of natural beauty in the self-impressed art world empowered me to be a visual voice for nature. People can be so full of their own importance. Many of us lack the humility to acknowledge before we existed and after we have perished that nature will survive. What's more, even if we bring our death upon ourselves, war, the decimation of natural places, pollution, or disease, nature will endure. We need nature. Nature does not need us. I couldn't move to Manhattan because I accepted I needed natural beauty to thrive. In New York, most of the galleries were full of art tantrums on canvas. It was the moment in art to forsake craftsmanship, grace, and loveliness, as if art had become a contest judging who could throw the biggest fit and get paid the most for it. It all left me even more inspired to share my admiration for the simple elegance of nature. The urbanization of the world was leading to an abandonment of what was naturally beautiful, following instead the fashion of ugly art. If I was going to follow anything, it would be the laws of nature, not fashion. I returned to my placid country home on Napa Valley's Silverado Trail, knowing I could not stay if I wanted artistic exposure. New York could not work, but San Francisco felt like a compromise. I could have exposure while maintaining the balance I needed. I decided to find a woman to show my work to. When I met with Edith Caldwell, she said my work was lovely, and she named many well-respected locations where it should be. I asked her, "Why shouldn't my art be in your gallery?" "Because I cannot sell peaceful nature." I was shocked, "But you are the only one who tries." She looked down as she said, "So I should know. People in the city don't buy serene nature." "Why?" "I don't know." She appeared perplexed. "I have a theory." Looking up, she said, "What is your theory?" "People do not want to be reminded of what they have forsaken." She thought about it and said, "As good a theory as I've ever heard." I left feeling sad about what was reflected in the ugly urban art world. I also left more committed to sharing my art with a world in desperate need of reminders of nature. My art is a meditation on natural beauty. I do it because I need to, and people need nature to be restored. We do not need more reminders of human hubris. We need to come back into harmony by balancing artificial ugliness with natural beauty. Um, well, that was interesting to hear for me. I mention this pretty much every time I've been doing these stories, that I wrote the book and recorded this years ago, a few years ago, and so I haven't read it since. And so hearing it for the first time in this amount of time is a very fresh perspective. And I thought it was very poignant that doing this beautiful little iris while hearing that story just seemed like the perfect duality. And here I am, still inspired by nature, as I ever will be. So that made me happy to hear my commitment, my lifelong commitment. Yes, I hear the Tibetan bell.
On YouTube, The Lone asked, great story. What a cad. How did you keep that from discouraging you as an artist?
Thank you. That's a great question. And there are a lot of CADs in the world, and there are a lot of competitive, fear-based control, I call it, that can manifest as violence, competitiveness, jealousy, greed. All those dark things all come from fear. And I decided very young in life that the more people did things that I felt hurt by, the more committed I would be to try to stay kind and honest and awake. The more people were false and not aware of what was around them or the effect they had on others. And what also keeps me going besides that commitment is that it's so much bigger than me, and being a representative of nature and living in harmony with it, which is crucial. It always has been, but now most people understand that with global warming and the degradation of the environment and pollutants and all that. I think almost everybody, hopefully everybody, but there's always holdouts, understand that we need to live in harmony and respect one another in nature to survive. And so it's so much bigger than me. And that's what keeps me going. I can either give up and feel sad and bitter about humanity's effect on nature, or I can do my part to represent the better way to live in harmony with nature, using up as little as possible, consuming as little, creating as much. How's that? All right. So, before we move on to the next story, I just thought of this morning. Do you need to come out, or can I put this under this camera and show it? This is the art after that story. It's called New York. And I did this many years. I'm trying to see if there's the date, 1986. So many years before the trade towers were struck. And it's the only drawing painting I've ever done that I thought was ominous, and I put it away. I didn't share it or show it in any exhibitions until the day the trade towers were hit, and then I went and got it out of the drawer and thought, wow. People said it was precognitive. I always felt uncomfortable in those buildings, and the logical explanation was they just seemed like gold bullion bars standing up and bragging wealth to the world, dwarfing everything else in the environment around them. I thought that's why I was uncomfortable in those buildings. But I did this in a series called 7 Cities at Sunset. So that's the art after that story. And this is our print here in a glassine. So that's what that sheen is that we do here at the Emerald Lady, because I'm so fortunate and grateful to have a son who's technically able. What is the term that Meg said? Is texpertise. He learned how to make these museum quality archival inks and no acid paper, so we can put, and then he made me a web store that my prints, we have small, medium, and large that we make right here at the Emerald Lady, and we don't have to add any price for a middle person. So that makes me happy, because I believe art is for everyone. So, all right, shall we move on to the next story? And I'm gonna do this guy again, a different version, just to show flexibility. And maybe we'll turn it the other direction. Huh? Okay.
Memoirs of a Squid. Squid's restaurant was a trendy hotspot where every type of creature in the sea of humanity swam. It was across the street from a church of Scientology, up the street from the bus depot, and nearby a homeless shelter. It was never totally calm sailing. Having recently moved back to San Francisco and being newly financially responsible for my nephews and mother without any help from my siblings, I needed more income. I ran into the bartender from Squid's, and he mentioned they were hiring. So I went right down and introduced myself to the woman behind the bar. Though she told me they didn't need the help, I slid my business card across the counter and said, "Give me a call if that changes. I've done everything from waiting tables and mopping floors to running my own restaurant in Napa Valley." As I turned to walk away, she said, "Wait here." When she returned, she signaled for me to follow her to a table where another woman was sitting. The two of them asked a few questions before they asked if I could start the next day as the manager hostess. I told them yes, but I had a few requirements. My nightly pay needed to be separate from the tip pool, and I would not stay past closing. I would always show up sober, on time, not take bribes for seating people out of order, and I would watch over the restaurant and everyone in it. They agreed to my terms and handed me a set of keys to the office. When I arrived the next evening, the staff knew nothing about me except I had the only keys to the office, which was alarming to me and resented by the crew, but I needed the job. The owners left town, giving me no instructions or introductions. All of this immediately revealed to me that this was going to be interesting and challenging. But it was a job I did not have to think about while I wasn't there, allowing me to focus on my art. Within minutes of arriving my first night, a small, homeless alcoholic stumbled in and tried to get the wallet out of a man's pocket. The man, who was seated with two women and was clearly trying to show off, jumped out of his chair and positioned himself to hit the old drunk. I got there just in time to get between them and say to the homeless guy, "Can we go outside and talk about this, please?" He smiled and said, "Sure," while following me out the door. When I saw the young man coming toward us, I said quickly to the homeless drunk, "Actually, I don't have anything to say." Leaving him outside, I closed the door behind me and stood in front of it on the inside to create a barrier between them. I locked the door behind me while the patron was threatening to kill the little old man. I got in front of him and said firmly, "He will not be coming back in, and you're not going out there. What he did was not right, but he is living in the street with nothing to eat." Obviously, his mental faculties are diminished, which is why he would try such a desperate attempt at picking your pocket while you are seated. "I should kill him and teach him a lesson," he shouted. I said in a scolding tone, his miserable existence is his lesson. Please go eat your meal with your friends, knowing he has no meal or friends. He threatened again to kill him. I said, if you are trying to impress your women friends with your courage to take on such a formidable adversary, a tiny old man who cannot stand or think straight, you should know most women are more impressed by compassion than brutality. He went back to his table and sat down mumbling. I brought the old man a small to-go cup of soup and said, just ask if you're hungry next time. He said, thank you, kind person, as he wandered away. It became my immediate policy to watch the sidewalk and try to intercept desperate people before they wandered in, and offered to bring them a cup of soup if they waited outside. For the pennies this cost the restaurant and how effective it was in keeping peace inside, it seemed obvious. Yet the crew who had been there for years were astounded. I was amazed no one thought of it sooner when there had been brawls regularly inside. My job was like a traffic cop at the intersection between heaven and hell. The most powerful tool I had was a kindness to redirect the dangerous ones back out the door gracefully. I said the same thing to everyone, no matter how they dressed or what they drove up in, or whether they stumbled or strutted in. Everyone was greeted with, "May I help you?" The homeless who wandered in while I was seating someone else would often say, "I am hungry." I would reply, "I apologize, but I cannot give you a table. If you would be so kind to wait here as I escorted them out, I will bring you something to eat." Some would wander off before I could bring them something. This always worked to keep the peace. But if I was in the restroom when someone wandered in, it was chaos. The crew thought I had some magical power. They said, "He has never come in here without a fight before. How do you do it?" I would tell them, all you have to do is treat everyone with respect and show no fear. The restaurant was where tourists would come to see the latest street fashions and cool people. I felt like a babysitter in punk paradise. Every night there were opera and theater goers sitting next to pimps and drug dealers. The out-of-town people had no idea of the sort of folks they were next to. The bodybuilder busboy watched the door whenever I asked him to, as soon as he saw the effectiveness of my ways, and would tell me when dubious people came in. One evening, I went into the empty auxiliary dining room for a moment to get away from the deafening music everybody else seemed to enjoy. I was standing by the huge plate glass window at the far end of the unlit room. Staring out the window, taking a few deep breaths, I felt something ominous approaching. I turned around quickly to see a huge woman coming toward me really fast. Her shoe-polished black hair was teased and piled on top of her head, making her nearly 7 feet tall. She looked ready for a fight, and like the sort of person who had been in a lot of them. The restaurant was so loud outside this room she could have shot me and no one would have heard it. She outweighed me by more than 100 pounds, and I had not ever been in a fight. She said, "I don't like the way you've been sticking your ass in my boyfriend's face." Without hesitation, I said, "Thank you for telling me." This confused and disarmed her just long enough for me to get past her and run out the door, where the busboy who had been looking for me stepped in front of her. She stomped back to her table. The busboy had appointed himself my bodyguard, which I'd never appreciated more. He didn't take his eyes off her until she left. After she had gone, the crew asked me what happened, and we all got a good laugh trying to imagine me flirting with her emaciated, greasy, speed freak boyfriend. Another night, a white man stuck his face into the phone booth where a black man was on the phone. The two of them were about to punch each other when I got there and said, "People are having dinner here. Take it outside if you need to beat your chest like a couple of gorillas." Getting them to focus on me instead of each other, I continued, "Come on, Let's go out front because I want to see which one of you is the silverback." The white man left the restaurant, the black man finished his meal, and then thanked me for stopping the fight. One early evening, I saw 3 rough-looking teenage boys walk up to the plate glass window carrying 2x4s. I did not have a good feeling about their intentions, so I went outside and said, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" They were clearly surprised I spoke to them. The leader said, "Just out for a walk." I pointed at the huge boards in their hands and said, "Oh, I suppose those are walking sticks." "That's right," the leader said, and pressed his body up against me, pushing me into the window. He was trying to intimidate me, so I asked, "What's your name?" When he answered, I replied, "That's the name of my nephew I'm raising." Impressed that I was not scared or disrespectful, he said, "Hey, you have friends in the hood now. Let us know if you ever need anything and we'll take care of it." "Thanks, I appreciate it. But what I want is for you guys to take care of yourselves. And I think you should lose those walking sticks because they look like trouble. I have to get back to work now. Have a good night, and please be careful." Then there was the night I was looking across the street and saw 3 men talking, pointing at squids. Then 2 walked over while the third stayed behind. As soon as the 2 were outside the restaurant, they both started running toward the door. The first one started screaming, "He's going to kill me." The second man ran in after him, and the third one waited outside. While the first 2 were yelling and running around, the third came in looking for purses left unattended by the people who got up to see what was going on. I recognized the first man from a previous experience when he was intruding on 2 women who asked me for help. I asked him politely to give them space. He was the only person in the year I worked there who threatened me, saying, "Come near me and I'll hit you." I said, "I asked you respectfully and you threatened me, so you have to leave." Now, months later, he was back with a plan to rob distracted diners. Luckily, the police had seen the robbery setup as they were driving by. They only caught one of the 3 men, but they could not arrest him since he had not been successful in stealing anything. I asked if I could talk to him and said, "If you are hungry, you could have asked for something to eat. I've not turned anyone away, but now you're not allowed to come in here again. In fact, if you need to walk down the street, you better walk on the other side." After he had gone, I offered the cops some food and sat down with them because it was the first time the police had ever shown up when called by squids. It had the reputation of being so rough they didn't bother with it. I told the cops the people who worked there told me they thought I was an undercover cop for a long time. The police said, "We know why, the way you talked to that thug." I don't usually talk like that, but he threatened me before, and tonight he was trying to rob us. I always wore the same black pants and jacket that looked like leather but was naugahyde to keep the smell of fried calamari from permeating my skin. The cook told me I looked like one of Charlie's angels. Everyone else at Squid's had been there from the beginning. I was the only newcomer and the only one with the office keys. The owners must have hired me to scare the crew because someone was dealing drugs, though the owners did not tell me any of their concerns. I did not blame the crew for not embracing me under the circumstances. Raising my nephews and caring for my sweet, sickly mother made the income crucial, so I did not allow it to bother me either. Being avoided by the rest of the staff during my shift made my job easier since I needed to stay alert to not miss danger approaching, and it was always close by. What mattered to me was that everyone stayed safe on my watch, not whether or not I was popular. After I'd been there for almost a year, I booked the extra dining room for my birthday and invited the whole crew and my friends. The attire suggestion was elegantly ridiculous, which was outrageously fun. Much to my delight and surprise, one waiter did a fire-eating act. Another wore an enormous divine mask, and a third did a hilarious skit of a baby with a huge head. We had a hula hoop contest and a photo booth to document all the creative fun. Perhaps inviting the crew melted their cool hearts. Finally, everyone was warm and accepted me. This made it bittersweet soon after when I got my sign that it was time to go. When I came to work one afternoon to find a familiar homeless man had been murdered out front, I gave my notice and took only the Memoirs of a Squid with me.
Okay. Well, that was another trip down memory lane. It's so interesting to me how my experience is that the thing that keeps us the safest in life is being respectful. It's not weapons, it's not muscles, it's not bodyguards, it's being respectful, because even really desperate, in pain, altered on drugs and chemicals people, well, they have everyone wants to be treated respectfully. And when they ask, I heard this in an interview, people in prison who have killed people, why? They often say, well, I told her, not to scream or I'd kill her, and she screamed. She didn't respect my wishes, or he didn't treat me respectfully. So being respectful is really our secret weapon. And it's something we can be proud and feel good about later. So I hope some of the people there learned that. But I'm just grateful I got through it without getting hurt, and no one got hurt on my watch. I heard the Tibetan bell.
So Joni B on YouTube said, "Your archival prints are wonderful. I love mine." Heart emoji. And she said, "This story is a great lesson in compassion and dealing with difficult people."
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I love seeing what you did with the different idea than I'd had, using one of the rose stencil on your guitar case. It looks so beautiful. And I love seeing what you and other people do with the stencils to express your creativity. And I love being part of that, giving people a template, like I'm using these to be templates. And there's 2 different versions. I'm going to do a third one with this third story.
And MMM on YouTube, absolutely fascinating storytelling. Love your work. How do you keep your composure under such difficult circumstances?
Well, thank you. What a kind thing to say. And I think one of the many reasons, or the number of reasons, that I do not feel bad about, feel sorry for myself, regret my difficult upbringing, is it was my teacher to stay calm, stay present, stay in the moment, not let fear narrow my. I like to say fear makes us myopic, love widens our view. So we can often see solutions in drastic situations if we stay in love and have a wide view. If we go to fear, our view narrows down to what we fear, and we may not see the solution. So try to stay in love for ourselves, love for everybody. even those who might be threatening others or threatening us, if we can stay in compassion, we can keep our wits about us. Yes, I'm ready. Last story.
Orchids, Apathy, and Understanding. As my mother passed by my floral arrangement, she curled 2 long, dangling blades of grass back up through the orchid stems, transforming their awkward shape into an elegant form. She was an aesthetic alchemist with a gift for turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. She had an eye for detail while being able to keep the whole picture in mind. Pointing out things to look at, but not telling me what to see, was her clever way of guiding me to expand my perceptive abilities. While her lack of vanity allowed her to not notice or be concerned with her own appearance, from across the room she would call me over to remove an inch-long beige thread from my beige skirt. She would insist on hemming my dress to correct the slightest asymmetry, while her own used store clothing was usually mismatched. I finally overcame any embarrassment over my mother's humble appearance at one of my exhibitions when I gave her a gorgeous flowing royal blue and silver dress to wear. Wanting to keep it perfect before the opening, she put a stained blouse over the dress to protect it while she ate. While I was talking to Josephine Landor, the artist wife of the founder of a globally successful corporate design company, I waved my mother over to meet my new friend. As we spoke, my eyes dropped to the dirty blouse she had forgotten to take off. When Josephine looked away, my mother said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I'll go take it off now." "No, you are beautiful just the way you are. Don't go anywhere." Finally, I could see how exquisite my mother was, beyond my own vanity and her complete lack of it. From that moment on, her disregard for the superficial served as a test of the depth of others. I weeded out those who were bothered by my mother's appearance. Those like Josephine, who remember her as elegant, turned out to be the dearest of friends. My mother was many wonderful things, including a sincerity meter. Those who saw the qualities of her heart beyond her lack of attention to her exterior turned out to be internally exquisite themselves. Whenever a friend did not ever ask her to join us, I knew they were not deep enough to be lasting friends. Once, just as I was arriving late to meet my mother for lunch on Haight Street in San Francisco, she was being escorted out of the cafe by 2 men, one under each arm. They were about to set her on the sidewalk as I ran up yelling, "That's my mother, what are you doing?" They froze as I approached, and I took her to the closest chair. She pointed to her throat because she was choking and could not speak. I gave her a napkin and stood covering her from the onlookers, saying, "It's okay, I'm here." She looked up at me, relaxed a little bit, and spit up a small chicken bone she had accidentally swallowed in their soup. We both started to breathe again. I hugged her for a long time. I felt a terrible rage. She saw the fury in my eyes and said, "Claire, it's okay." With the tears I was trying to hold back bursting out, I said, "What if I hadn't come when I did? They were putting you on the sidewalk." They had assumed because of her humble appearance she was a street person. They must have thought she was drunk because she could not speak while she was choking. She said, "They see so much pain that they are numb. Not everyone has the strength to keep feeling and seeing without looking away like you, dear." She always called me dear, and she always meant it. I said, I'll get you some water. I went to the counter where the owner and the two men stood perfectly still. As I walked to the counter, everyone watched in silence. I picked up a glass, filled it with water slowly, and set the pitcher down. Everyone in the cafe held their breath, wondering what I would do or say. I brought my mother the water. As she drank it, the only sound in the cafe was her swallowing. When she finished it, we got up and left. As we were leaving, I shouted silently without uttering a sound that she was the kindest, deepest, smartest, funniest, sweetest, most delightfully creative person you could have ever met. But you do not deserve to meet her. For her, I stayed silent as we went home to her lovely orchids, leaving their apathy behind.
Wow, that one was really hard not to tear up. That is such a perfect story of my mother. That is, talk about grace under pressure. So here is the art that the arrangement that she rearranged, putting these grasses through themselves, and then I did this drawing when she lived with me. So that's the art after that story in the book. And for me, the writing and the art and the decor and the jewelry and the wardrobe, any form of creativity is connected to all forms of creativity. And my hope is that giving myself permission to flow, because my mother gave me permission to flow, helps you flow and enjoy stepping into the creative flow, increasing your happiness, your ability to solve problems creatively, enhance your life no matter what materials you have, no matter what funds you have or don't have. There's always a way we can make our lives a little more beautiful, a little more graceful with our creativity, and that's what it's all about for me. I didn't share the art after the second story, so let's share that now. This is called Reverse Space Birds. So putting the art with the stories was necessary for me, and that's why we self-published my book, because the big publishers, I was flattered, they wanted to publish my book, but they wanted the art to be separate. And I felt very strongly that it's me, it's my story, and art is part of my story, part of who I am. And my mother's the artist, my son an artist. We're all artists. Every single first grader, second grader I worked with as an artist in residence in the school could flow in any creative direction. And starting in third grade, it started getting a little harder because people hear critical things and they start comparing themselves to others. So our job, our duty is to keep that childlike curiosity, that childlike enthusiasm, and just explore and play and enjoy it, and know that there are no failures if we learn from it and we enjoy doing it. So let that be our guide. Are there any questions, comments to address? Huh?
MMM on YouTube said, love that story.
Thank you very, very, very much. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. And on Thursday, I'm going to start the Warblers and Wildflowers stencil, turning that robe into a piece of art with 26 warblers on it, wildflowers. And then I'm going to be starting to share the Warbler and Wildflower SVG stencils for people to purchase or get free if they're Patreon members. There's also a free Patreon membership, no obligation, that all the other stuff is listed there. So that's available, as well as the $5 a month membership way to support my work and get all the stencils at no additional cost. And they're going to keep coming out. After warblers, it'll be cranes, and we'll just keep going. There's, I think, 300 now, and by the time we get to the 300th, there'll be more. So thanks for being here. Enjoy this gorgeous day, and like, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Thank you, Bodhi, for all your help.
Happy to help. Good job. That was really nice. Great stories.
Thank you. All right.
Bye, everybody.
See you Thursday.